Good morning, everyone. This is Russell Rucker, and I'm here for another constitutional talk. Our main document is important, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And really, I'm going to try to go through a lot of the Federalist Papers. A lot of people look at the Federalist Papers, and I've heard it discussed as the owner's manual of the Constitution. This is the Federalist Papers. There's also the Anti-Federalist Papers. Now, we have two sides of most arguments, sometimes three or four, and the thing I want to talk about today, though, is if I'll go to Federalist I, because it's kind of an introduction to the Federalist Papers. And the Federalist Papers are written by Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton. He died in a duel. He was the leader of the Federalist Party, which I guess that's why they do call it the Federalist Papers. You got John Jay, who was the first Supreme Court justice, and then you got James Madison. Of course, James Madison actually wrote the outline for the Constitution, and so I mean, these men were working on the Constitution. They do have an in-depth knowledge of it. But I thought we'd start today with a kind of a review, and I'll read much of Federalist I to you. And keep in mind, when we're talking about the Federalist and Anti-Federalist Papers, we're in a period of time where we're arguing over the ratification of the Constitution, of our new Constitution, replacing the Articles of Confederation. And up in New York, which is a later state to adopt, they were arguing in newspapers back and forth whether to approve the document or not. So I'll begin. Remember, this is Alexander Hamilton's words. To the people of the state of New York, after an unequivocal experience of the inefficiency of the subsisting federal government, in other words, the failures of the Articles of Confederation, you are called upon to deliberate on a new Constitution for the United States of America. The subject speaks of its own importance, comprehending in its consequences nothing less than the existence of the Union, the safety and welfare of the parts which it is composed, the fate of an empire in many respects, the most interesting in the world. It has been frequently remarked that it seems to have been reserved to the people of this country, by their conduct and example, to decide the important question. And this really is it. Whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force. If there be any truth in the remark, the crisis at which we are arrived may with propriety be regarded as the era in which that decision is to be made. In other words, it is here, it is now, we have to decide. And a wrong election of the part we shall act may, in this view, deserve to be considered as a general misfortune of mankind. This idea will add the inducements of philanthropy to those of patriotism, to heighten the solace which all considerate and good men must feel for the event. Happy will be if our choice should be directed by a judicious estimate of our true interests. Unperplexed and unbiased by considerations not connected with the public good. But this is a thing more ardently to be wished than seditiously to be expected. So it is our actions that will decide. The plan offered to our deliberations affects too many particular interests, innovates upon too much local institutions, not to involve in its discussion a variety of objects foreign to its merits, and of views, passions, and prejudices, little favorable to the discoveries of truth. So we have all these competing factions and important institutions throughout the country that we have to consider when we're looking at this change. And this is a fairly large change, although some things were just carried from the Articles of Confederation to our document today. Among the most formidable of the obstacles which the new Constitution will have to encounter may readily be distinguished the obvious interests of a certain class of men in every state to resist all changes which may hazard a diminution of power, emolument, and consequences of the offices they hold under the state establishments, and the perverted ambition of another class of men who will either hope to aggrandize themselves by the confusions of their country or will flatter themselves with fairer prospects of elevation from the subdivision of the empire into several partial confederacies than from its union under one government. So there are people that have important stations at this time that would either want to change for their own benefit, or they want to keep the articles because they feel that that is where their point of power is. In other words, we are not talking about good government, but we're talking about people of personal power. And that's something we always have to worry about. But I regress. It is not, however, my design to dwell upon observations of this nature. I am well aware that it would be disingenuous to resolve discriminately the opposition of any sect of men, merely because their situations might subject them to suspicion, into interested or ambitious views. Candor will oblige us to admit that even such men may be actuated by upright intentions, and it cannot be doubted that much of the opposition which has been made its appearance, or may hereafter make an appearance, will spring from sources blameless at least, if not respectable, the honest errors of minds led astray by preconceived jealousies and fears. So numerous indeed and so powerful are the causes which serve to give a false bias to the judgment that we upon many occasions see wise and good men on the wrong as well as on the right side of questions of the first magnitude of society. This circumstance is duly attended to, would furnish a lesson of moderation to those who are ever so much persuaded of their being in the right in any controversy. And a further reason for caution in this respect might be drawn from the reflection that we are not always sure that those who advocate the truth are influenced by purer principles than those antagonists, ambition, avarice, personal animosity, party opposition, and many other motives not more laudable than these are apt to operate as well upon those who support as those who oppose the right side of a question. Were there not even inducements of moderation, nothing could be more ill-judged than the intolerant spirit which has at all times characterized political parties. For in politics, as in religion, it is equally absurd to aim at making proselytes by fire and sword. Heresies in either can rarely be cured by prosecution. So he's telling us how important it is to look at the documentation itself. Look at the new Constitution itself. Make an informed decision based not on your station or other stations that you may be inclined to agree with, but to look and study what is here for the adoption. And but I continue with Hamilton. And yet, however, just these sentiments will be allowed to be. We have already sufficient indications that it will happen in this, as in all former cases of great national discussion. A torrent of angry and malignant passions will be let loose. To judge from the conduct of the opposite parties, we shall be led to conclude that they will mutually hope to evince the justness of their opinions, and to increase the number of their converts by the loudness of their declamations and the bitterness of their invectives. An enlightened zeal for the energy and efficiency of government will be stigmatized as the offspring of a temper fond of despotic power and hostile to the principles of liberty. An over-scrupulous jealousy of danger to the rights of the people, which is more commonly the fault of the head than of the heart, will be represented as mere pretense and artifice, the stale bait for popularity at the expense of the public good. It will be forgotten, on the one hand, and the jealousy is usually concomitant of love, and that the noble enthusiasm of liberty is apt to inflict with a spirit of narrow and illiberal distrust. On the other hand, it will be equally forgotten that the vigor of government is essential to the security of liberty, that in the contemplation of the sound and well-informed judgment, their interests can never be separated, and that a dangerous ambition more often lurks beyond the specious mark of zeal for the rights of the people than under the forbidding appearance of zeal for the firmness and efficiency of government. History will teach us that the former has been found as much more certain road to the introduction of despotism than the latter, and that of those men who have overturned their liberties of republics, the greatest number have begun their career by paying an obsequious court to the people, commencing demagogues and ending tyrants. So we have to be careful of who we're listening to, and those that will swear an allegiance to the people, as well as those that would be loyal to party. These are important things. And I continue on. In the course of the preceding observations, I have had an eye, my fellow citizens, to putting you upon your guard against all attempts, from whatever quarter, to influence your decision in a matter of the utmost moment to your welfare, by any impressions other than those which may result from the evidences of truth. You will no doubt at the same time have collected from the general scope of them that they proceed from the source not unfriendly to the new Constitution. Yes, my countrymen, I own it to you that after having given it an attentive consideration, I am clearly of opinion it is of your interest to adopt it. And here we're talking about adopting our Constitution, which is what the Federalist Papers were originally all about. I am convinced that this is the safest course for your liberty, your dignity, and your happiness. I affect no reserves which I do not feel. I will not assume you with any appearance of deliberation when I have decided. I frankly acknowledge to you my convictions, and I will freely lay before you the reasons on which they are founded. The consciousness of good intentions disdains ambiguity. I shall not, however, multiply professions on this head. My motives must remain in the depository of my own breast. My arguments will be open to all and may be judged out by all. They shall at least be offered in the spirit which will not disgrace the cause of truth. I propose in a series of papers to discuss the following interesting particulars: the utility of the Union to your political prosperity, the insufficiency of the present Confederation to preserve the Union, the necessity of a government at least equally energetic with the one proposed to the attainment of this object, the conformity of the proposed Constitution to the two principles of Republican government, its analogy to your own state's constitutions, and lastly, the additional security which its adoption will afford to the preservation of the species of government, to liberty and to property. In the progress of this discussion, I shall endeavor to give a satisfactory answer to all the objections which shall have made their appearance that may seem to have any claim to your attention. It may perhaps be thought superfluous to offer arguments to prove the utility of union, a point no doubt deeply engraved on the hearts of the great body of the people in every state, and one which it may be imagined has no adversities, but the fact is that we already hear it whispered in the private circles of those who oppose the new Constitution, that the 13 states are too great extent for any general system, that we must of necessity resort to separate confederacies or distinct portions of the whole. The doctrine will in all probability be gradually propagated till it has materials enough to countenance an open avowal of it. For nothing can be more evident to those who are able to take an enlarged view of the subject than the alternative of an adoption of the new Constitution or a dismemberment of the Union. So here he's arguing we either adopt it or the whole Union is done. And we will wind up as separate states, nation states. It will therefore be of use to begin by examining the advantages of the Union, the certain evils and the probable dangers to which every state shall be exposed from its dissolution. This shall accordingly constitute the subject of my next address. And he signs it, as he always does, Publius. So in Federalist I, it's kind of an opening salvo, giving us a direction of what's at stake, why we need to approve this Constitution, why this Constitution is the best that we have, far better than the Articles of Confederation, which now governed the states. That we have to have union. That we needed to confederate in some sort of government. That government of the people, by the people, is not an easy abstract. That it's difficult. But that it must be done, and this is the best that we can do. Hamilton makes an explosive argument, really, but anti-federalists will come back and argue separately for different things that they think need to be changed. As the Federalists and anti-federalists go at it, and Hamilton and Jay and Madison try to explain what is necessary and why this Constitution is so important. I know that some of these arguments, some of these papers, these Federalist papers, can be lengthy and hard to really get a grasp of. but he's really arguing for the adoption here. Hope you get something from the talk, something from Federalist I to continue on, and we will talk to you next week on the next Constitution Talk. Have a good day for now, folks. Goodbye for now.